Hey boys and girls, so we're back for another book review. This one's going to be a little different than what we've been on. We've been on Volkswagens, and that's pretty much what you're going to find on my channel. But I figured this one's got to be included because it's air-cooled, and it is a motor that we see transplanted, used to see transplanted a lot, not so much anymore. We're talking about the Corvair. Now, most people will tell you they've actually owned a Corvair, so probably younger kids. Everybody in my generation and older have owned a Corvair at some point in time. Or uncle had one or something like that. Alright? So this book was originally written by Bill Fisher, who also wrote the How to Hot Rod VW book. Very good book. He's also wrote a whole bunch of them. There's a big, huge list of those books to his name. But this one has been updated. I guess a gentleman, Seth Emerson, updated the older version. So it has newer stuff in it, and it has some older stuff that still applies. The neat thing about it is it has a very, just like how the Hot Rod VW book has a very good history of different makes, different models and horsepower and torque of the engines. They do the same thing in this book here. The big deal that they kind of go over here about horsepower, okay, now this is kind of, I guess, a big debate on their Corvair forums, is that the way they rated the horsepower on these motors, it's just the way they rated them on all the 60s model motors, okay? As everybody knows, a 1600 dual-port 60 horsepower motor does not make 60 horsepower. If you're putting it on a dyno, you'll probably see around 50 to 40-something horse in that range, because Volkswagen didn't do it with the fan belt on it. They didn't do it with the exhaust on it. They didn't do it with the right timing in it that you're going to drive around in. They did it lean and rich as possible to get the air fuel just right so they could have the most horsepower. They actually go into that about this in here. So basically, the 140 horse Corvair 4-carb motor is like 120. I don't remember what they exactly said in here if you put it on a dyno today. And the 110 is like a 90 or 80 horse or something. Basically, it's a pretty big drop is what they go over. And I know that that's a big debate on the forums and stuff for Corvairs. Really, it doesn't matter, okay? What to me matters is I take motor with XYZ horsepower and add stuff to it and it gains more, okay? That's all I care about. I don't care if it's 1,000 horsepower, as long as it's fast enough to meet my needs. Alright, so this book does go into the original motors. Tells you basically every type of motor they had. There are several displacements. I didn't know until after, I think it was 64 and up, have the larger 164 cubic inch, and everything before that was a smaller cubic inch motor. They do pretty good. They go over like the oil system, they go over the heads, they go over the camshaft. I wish they kind of gave a recommendation on the cam a little better. They give you advertised duration and max lift, like 450 lift is about all they say you really need, and for a street motor, an advertised duration of 280 with a no more than 260 for 50,000s. Gets you a guideline, but I really wish, since there's only like 2 or 3 cam manufacturers that are making cams for this, I mean, any cam manufacturer will make a cam for you, but really everybody buys an Auto cam, or California Special, I think, makes a cam for it. And I've heard everybody say they're really close, and kind of been nice if they would have said, you know, like an Auto 10, Auto 20, or Auto 30 is the, because Auto doesn't technically make them anymore, it's Clark's Corvairs. You know, I wish they would have kind of gave us like, hey, you know, but anyways, they did not. So that was one little thing I wish they would have done that they did not. They just gave you the measurements, and you kind of choose your own. But like I say, since there's only 3 cam manufacturers, you really can't go too far wrong. They do talk about pistons and stuff in here. I don't think they talk too much about the 94 conversion. I think it did hit it in here. Let me see. But there is a guy in California that takes 94mm Volkswagen cylinders, and he will mill them so that the fins on the center cylinder are milled flat, and re-drill the holes and mill your heads and your case if you send it to him. And then he rebushes the rods to be able to take the 94mm SEMA Moly pistons. And that gets you like 3.1 liters or something like that, 3100 cc's. So don't remember if it mentioned it. I think it mentioned it in here, but it didn't have like a really big article on it. It's pretty good. they talk about the transmissions in here. They give you all the gear ratio options and the transmissions and stuff, and what parts are interchangeable in that. And they also talk about the turbo motors, the turbo spider motors. I should be showing you pictures, huh? They also talk about suspension in this. Pretty good on that. Corvairs, most people don't know, are actually an autocross car. A lot of the guys that do this stuff go autocross racing. Alright? And they are not a drag car. Okay? They are not a drag strip type car. They are really good, apparently, at handling. And from the videos I've watched, the Corvair guys actually like to go, and when they have their meets, they usually set up a slalom race or an autocross event there in a parking lot. Something I wish kind of the Volkswagen guys would kind of do, you know, or like dune buggy racing or something like that. But, you know, most people don't realize that even though they have a bad rap for the suspension in the rear ones, which was the early model 63 and down, had basically the same suspension a Volkswagen does, it's swing axle, they did have the problem with the wheels tucking under. So from 64 and up, I think 64's first year, they put a leaf spring in the back, basically a camber compensator, and that fixed the problem. And then in 65, they redesigned the whole rear suspension to be basically an independent rear IRS style suspension. They were already independent, but more links in it to keep it from pigeon toeing. But they got the bad name for the Nader book, and you know, like, they never recovered from that. But it's kind of amazing that you don't really hear people saying, "Oh, that's an amazing autocross car," because apparently they were pretty good. You know, probably not the best today, but you know, they were for their day. They do talk about dune buggies and Corvair conversions. All right, they have some really cool pictures of old school, like the purple potato chip. They do talk about the types of kits to do, and the differences between a reverse rotation motor and flipping the ring and pinion on it. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Mostly the advantages are if you do a flop ring and pinion is cost, and the disadvantage is that you'll break your transmission. Alright, that's just the way it is. You're putting the stress on the ring gear on the back side of the tooth. You're not on the cup side where it clutches it, you're putting it on the back side. So, you know, there's that. On the reverse rotation, the advantage is you do away with that. You don't have the problem of breaking the transmission easily because the pinion is still hitting the ring gear the same way. The disadvantage is cost. Okay, you got to buy a reverse rotation cam, and you got to buy a reverse rotation distributor, and there's something else. I think like a cooling fan on the alternator has to be, the fins have to go the other way. Anyways, if I were to do it, I would probably do the reverse rotation motor because even though it costs more, my thought would be I'm probably going to put a small camshaft in it anyways to get the lope. So if I'm going to take the motor apart to do it, I might as well put the reverse rotation in there. Another good thing about the reverse rotation would be is if you ever decide, hey, I don't want a Corvair anymore, I can't find parts for it or whatever, I just don't like it, you could switch it back to a Volkswagen and not have to redo your transmission. So there you go. You can also buy any first street transmission and throw in there and be good. You don't have to have them flip the ring and pinion, which will charge you for and be weaker. So anyways, I give this one a thumbs up. It's got a lot of good information in it. The one place I'd say it did not excel in is I thought it would have porting techniques in cylinder heads like the Hot Rod VW engines does, because it's written by Bill Fisher. But the more I thought about it, the cylinder head doesn't lend itself to porting very easily. The intake manifold is part of the head, so you can't really get down in there so well. You can get behind the bowl area and do some bowl work. They do talk about bowl work a little bit, but they don't really show you. And the cylinder head doesn't have really a shrouding problem like the Volkswagen does, so there's really not a lot there that you can do without being an actual professional head shop. They do talk about milling the intake manifold off and putting the Crown Corvair manifolds to put the Webers off of a 911 on it. They do talk about exhaust on there. They do talk a lot about a lot of things. They actually do pretty good. And I think this is once again like a $20, $25 book. Amazon, they sell it brand new. Alright, so if you're going to think about doing a Corvair, if you're going to do a swap, or if you're going to buy a Corvair or something like that, a very good book to buy. It is not an instruction manual, alright, so don't think like this is going to teach me how to rebuild my Corvair motor. This is going to give you the information about the parts that are in your Corvair. And the neat thing is it's kind of an interchange manual telling you what does and does not kind of switch around. Interesting thing about it, that they used a lot of GM parts in that car. So there's parts in there like transmissions, for a good example, that parts do swap out. You can get roller rockers for these things because they use a Chevrolet small block Chevy rocker, it looks like. So you can get roller rockers for the Corvair motor. They still make that. You can get the, I heard distributors are harder to get, but you can still get the electronic and drop-in ignition for those. They make a kit to put an extra, if you have a 110 with the one carburetor on it and you want to make it more like a 140, they sell a kit that you can put, that you drill a hole in your manifold and you bolt this manifold that has an O-ring on it down on there, drill and tap it, and put the extra carburetors on it. So you can basically build a faux 140. The difference in the 140 is it has bigger valves, so, and a nitrated crank. Things I learned inside this book. Alright, so it's a pretty good book. I'd say definitely get it if you're thinking about doing a Corvair. Let's get out there and get our projects going, and I'll see you guys later. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell, and give me a thumbs up if this video helped you. I'll see you guys later.